Hey, this is Wyatt. Over the weekend, I was really close to getting a Zhiyun M2. It's a gimbal for the Canon M50, and I thought it would be really cool to be making these smooth, buttery shots and to get like myself, a clip of myself walking and have some motion in there without having to have a second person filming me. I thought that would be really cool. I mean, I would upgrade all of what I was doing just by having this gimbal. And I was watching so many different videos and I was like, wow, I gotta have this. And it was $70 off, 70 bucks off. So I was like, man, I should get this. I was this close to getting it, but I didn't. And here's why and what I'm gonna be doing instead. Check it out. So there I was over the weekend, and I'm watching these cool videos. I'm thinking, oh man, it would be so cool to get these buttery smooth shots. I was watching Potato Jet. Check this out. Potato Jet goes to New York City with his Canon M50 and a Zhiyun gimbal.
If you want to just get super awesome looking footage, just go into inverted mode, get this camera really low to the ground, go on a super wide angle lens, and go in slow motion like 60 frames per second or 120. No matter what you point it at, it's gonna look pretty awesome. I'm pretty sure I was like in inverted mode like 80% of the time.
That looks like fun, and it looks so possible. I mean, it looks great, right? And then I watched Evan Thomas and him doing a gimbal shot with the Zhiyun and the Canon M50.
In this, you can get some cool dolly or crane shots rather. So,
I mean, come on, who wouldn't want to try to duplicate that? Get those smooth shots. And then I looked at Tech Gear Talk and his trip to Mexico.
I had this gimbal with me for a few months now. I've taken it on a bunch of shoots. I traveled with it to Mexico and it really worked great.
All these things about the Zhiyun and the Canon M50, and I'm like, oh, I gotta have it. Gear acquisition syndrome was just kicking in hard, right? And I'm like, oh man, I gotta have this. I mean, I could be doing these buttery smooth footages. I could be getting my clips of myself walking and not have another person there. Oh, it was gonna be so cool. And then I started to think back to one of these videos I saw previously, and well, here, check it out.
The reason why I bought it is just so stupid. The Zhiyun Crane V2, the Zhiyun Crane V2, Zhiyun, however you pronounce it, the Crane V2. Man, I bought this thing because I thought I was a super vlogger at one time and that I was gonna have my camera on this at all times when I was gonna be vlogging myself. Like, what the hell was I thinking? Bro, I purchased this thing, used it on a trip when I went to Seattle, never used it again. Using a gimbal is legit one of the most cumbersome things ever when it comes to filming.
So that was a video from YC Imaging, and he puts it right on the line. The opposite of that is you're just gonna look ridiculous. I mean, how often are you gonna be sitting there with the Canon M50 and really bringing both pieces of tech? It's like one of those things that he just thought was stupid and he got rid of. He even talks about having a Ronin in the comments and giving that away. All right, now that's big. Okay, then I started to think about why. Why would I need a gimbal like that? So then I wrote down the reasons why I would want a gimbal. As a creative entrepreneur, it'd be cool to get the walking clips and have some motion in there. And I think I could get the gimbal to follow me when I did that, not have somebody else with the camera. And then I was like, oh, obviously the buttery smooth shots and a lot of things that I could get a lot smoother than if I used something like this, which is basically a Gorilla knockoff for like 10 bucks. So I could get buttery smooth footage, right? And so I was inspired by this. But then I started to think about, okay, what are the alternatives? If you want that buttery smooth footage, first of all, the alternative, of course, is to learn how to use handheld. Now, I'd be doing a lot of B-roll footage handheld. Then, just as I was inspired by watching all these videos on the gimbal, I went and I watched all these videos on using handheld motions for B-roll. And I got really inspired by that. And one of the things I realized is that that was a skill I really wanted to develop. And if I have a gimbal, I'm gonna actually hamstring myself in learning that skill. And it's a skill I can use so that later, let's say I do get a gimbal, I can actually enhance my abilities more rather than trying to like replace the ability that I don't have, the handheld smooth motion ability. And so I thought, okay, I'm gonna dedicate myself to handheld. I got really inspired by these videos, and so that's what I wanted to do. Then I thought, well, what about the other part? What about catching those clips of myself like walking? And I looked back along my arsenal of stuff. The Smooth. The Smooth is a gimbal, and it's meant for, of course, the iPhone, okay? It works actually pretty well, and you can do a lot of things with it. I took it to Funnel Hacking Live when I went last year, and it works really well. And I can actually combine the shots that I get with my phone, hopefully we'll see how it works out, and get the shots that I want. So basically I had some alternatives. I wrote down what those alternatives were, but even though I wrote those down and I had those, I was still like, oh, that would be so cool to have. And so what I did is I went and took it a step further, and I went and looked at poor reviews and why it didn't work with the Canon M50. And then I looked on videos where they talked about the problems with the Canon M50. And one of the top problems with using the Canon M50 with the Zhiyun crane is that this is at the top end. Now this has a kit lens on it. Right now, this weighs almost the amount that is the maximum for the Zhiyun gimbal. So in fact, I couldn't really swap out any of the lenses. I'd probably be limited to this. I did weigh in having this adapter with the 24mm lens that I'm using right now on my T4i, and I figured out that it weighs at the maximum. Okay, it's like even a little bit over, just slightly. It's like right there. So basically, you're using that gimbal at the maximum it can be used. Now, Potato Jet and some other people showed some really cool things you can do with that gimbal. But the thing of it is, again, I realized I'd be hamstringing my skill development, and also it just wasn't enough. I mean, there were still some features that I couldn't use because of the weight limit and because of the way it was configured. So although the Zhiyun gimbal does list the Canon M50 as being compatible, I really think if you look at the videos where you have to configure it, and well, here's one. It's a really good video actually that I think is probably a really good video for explaining how to balance the M50 on the Zhiyun, but it says one thing over and over again. Right, that one thing, finicky. And I think that's one of those things, whereas if you're okay with that finickiness, which I often am, I mean, think about the gear, think about when you don't have gear, how you have to use things that might not be the best and are a little bit finicky. And that's why you spend money on gear, so it's not finicky. So, in the end, I didn't get it, but in the end, I also realized something. I was strengthening my gear acquisition muscle. So basically, by saying no, it was enabling me to be stronger to say no the next time. I also figured out a system where I look at the cons and I look at the alternatives and I get inspired by using those alternatives, by using those handheld skills, by developing those handheld skills so I get the shots I want. So I was really psyched. I didn't get the gimbal and I still looked at the videos and I still want it. But I'm able to say no, and when I start thinking about wanting it, I get inspired about using handheld and getting the B-roll motions that I want and really developing my skills a bit more. By the end, it was really cool. I did give it up. I mean, it was hard because it was $70 off. And in fact, here, check this out. On eBay, I found it for $161. Open box, yes, but almost new. I mean, that was really hard to pass up. That's why my finger was on that buy button a couple times. So this whole process, I'm gonna come back to. Next time I have something where I'm looking at a piece of gear, I'm gonna come back to this system of looking at the cons, looking at the reason why I want it, coming up with alternatives, and getting inspired by those alternatives. If you wanna learn more about the Canon M50, be sure to subscribe and hit the like button if this helped you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.